going to pass on to Joe, who's, I think there's still a bronze award, or are you onto a gold by now?
I have to confess I haven't looked at the survey for about 2 years.
All right.
So
Okay.
I hope we've made progress.
I'm sure you have, yes.
Hello, everybody. Please, John or Andrew, just tell me when my time's up if I just carry on too far, won't you? So I'm Jo, and I'm a member of the United Church in Winchester, which is the joint Methodist and URC local ecumenical partnership. Been a member there since 1999 when we first came to live in Winchester, and have been on church council until fairly recently. I'll describe in a minute a little bit of our journey at the United Church in terms of issues of sustainability and eco-church, excuse me. And then I'll go on to talk a bit more about Winchester Green Week, which is sort of one of the things that has developed out of our, if you like, more local community effort. And that service at the cathedral was part of that. So I'm going to try and share my PowerPoint, so bear with me for a second. Can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. I'm afraid I'm just going to keep the little slide, like the prompt at the side, because that reminds me what I'm going to say next, so I don't repeat myself too often. But I hope you can see that the main one here is what you need to focus on. So one of our inspirations has been this, or my inspiration at least, and I've shared it with others, this quote in a book that was produced by the World Council of Churches called Making Peace with the Earth, about action and advocacy for climate justice. And Smiley, this person, wrote, "The shift from destructive to sustainable patterns of living is the great work of our time. In the ancient words of the Christian tradition, it is metanoia, repentance, and conversion, both of which mean literally turn around and change direction. They're about more than just thinking differently, but living differently, even being different," which is what we've already heard about from Week, about this expectation of cultural change. And that's what we're talking about in terms of what needs to happen in the face of the climate crisis. And so that's been a really helpful kind of articulation of our thinking behind. So at the United Church, we, like others, created a little group of interested and keen individuals to try and get this off the ground, which we called an Education for Sustainability Working Group. So rather than just focusing on eco-church, because we feel like that's one of the tools, this is about how as a community we're entering into the learning about that sustainability choice towards a constructive way of living and existing as a faith community and as individuals in this city. And our ambition was that as a group of keen individuals, we could work with the leadership group in the church and with, you know, relevant other groups to try and get this education for sustainability approach embedded in what we were doing. And that involved a program of education and awareness raising, and that we would come up with a 5 to 10 year plan that we're working on. It's sort of, you know, the years are going by and we are planning, but maybe not with that clear vision of an ultimate end goal. But what's important is that we wanted to, yes, do the audit because of the practical nature of a lot of this, which is about choices we make about our buildings and so on, and also the way that we live together as a community and what we put our effort and money to, and how we relate to other people, but also the spiritual element and our work beyond our own church, either as church networks or through our mission activities. So that was the beginning of our framework. And then we came up with this. So although this looks slightly formal and in my mind slightly intimidating, it was to try to capture the kind of work that we're doing at church anyway, to help us to realise that working on education for sustainability and the eco-church work is what we're doing at church. It's about how we're inspiring each other about this, what we feel is like our faith inspires a way of life that's about respect for the others, justice, where we find God. So that inspiring of each other is what do I know, how we share our own expertise. Why does that matter to me? How we share our interests and our motivation. And what's the theological connection? So it's not just separating out the environment as a secular issue, but, you know, what's the theological connection? How can we understand God through our relationship with the natural world and each other in it? And then on the right-hand side here, taking practical action, what are we doing about it? So steps that we're taking as a community, deciding which issues we want to address as a church community, and working together to find practical solutions to put them in place. And then challenging individuals within the church to say, what am I doing about it? So that it doesn't become a little subgroup of keenies that want to take this forward and everybody else can feel comfortable just carrying on life as usual, but the challenge back to everybody in our community to be involved and own the questions. And that there's a sort of circular nature and a reflective practice going on between these points of engagement. So I've used this framework sometimes for reporting back to the church at church meetings or in our magazine by putting answers to some of those questions under the text in the boxes so that people can see how it kind of fits together. So in 2018, we officially decided to make education for sustainability a focus for our 2 years of the way forward in that particular point. That was just after the World Wildlife Fund produced a report and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reported alarming rates of wildlife population decline and unbelievable biodiversity loss, worrying climate change rates, and the intense pressure that's put on ecosystems by humans. So it felt like a very sort of acute reaction to what we were hearing and concerned about. And that we felt that we wanted to commit as a community to acknowledging the urgent need for preserving and cherishing the earth and inspire others to take practical action. So we use the Our Russia Eco Church audit as a tool. And as has been explained to you, it has 5 areas. And so what you're encouraged to do is have a holistic approach to this. You can't get a bronze award if you only reach it in one area. It's a kind of across the board thing. So it keeps you looking at it holistically and balanced, and is very much rooted in, as a faith community, what's the response here? Not just, as I've said before, tackling light bulbs only. So we were delighted in 2019 to achieve our bronze award. We did this by switching our energy provider to a renewable energy source. We using fair trade products in our coffee shop, daily coffee bar, which we have open back again now after the lockdowns, using recycled paper in the office, making a plan to reduce our carbon footprint, having looked at what we were spending on energy and, you know, kind of just mapping out a bit of a plan, and the tools in Eco Church help you to do those things. So now we're working towards the Silver Eco Church Award by reducing our energy use, making greener choices about the way that we use and live in our buildings. I don't know if you know the United Church on Drury Street, it has no land around it, and we're literally adjoined to buildings either side of us, and it's a very old listed building, so it makes some things quite challenging. And there's an area on the Eco Church audit which is all about your space around your building, which WEEC is obviously using and featuring. We can't do that, so it just means that that's not applicable to our award. We don't get penalised for it. They take into account the reality of your situation. And we have been focusing on learning more about environmental issues and the interconnectedness of things, and discovering God's love through worship and faith that is mindful of the home that God has given us. So I'm just going to show you now a slide with a few of the actions that we have done. I've talked about the EFS framework, Education for Sustainability. In 2018, there was a march organised by Friends of the Earth initially, but all sorts of organisations joined in about climate change, and members of our church of all ages joined in with that, which was one of the first times they'd participated in that kind of activism. So it felt uncomfortable for many, but actually it was nothing happened that was scary or threatening or you know, in any way that they regretted being part of it. It was about coming together with others and saying, we care about this, and together, if we say it, we'll be louder. And I see that as a little bit of being, you know, evangelistic, not just as a verb, but the challenge that we've been given at the beginning of this evening that Andrea was saying about, we are here, God-given opportunity before us to face this challenge and live out our faith as a response to the climate crisis. So we did refurbish our kitchen in the church rather than put a new one in. And that was a big decision because it was going to be, in a financial sense, a more economic decision to just whip out the old and put the new in. But the question of waste and all the carbon that went into producing new kitchens, when the casing of all the cupboards was completely fine, actually was a really real conversation and debate. That was the first time I'd witnessed that happening in a church meeting. So that was quite interesting, and resulted in a decision to just get somebody in who crafted all the cupboard doors, and it's beautiful and lovely and functioning, and we didn't have to take all that old stuff out. So again, one very practical thing. Articles in our magazines, and a thing on the right here, you can see we created some house group material with these issues for each session, which was about really delving deeper into what do we mean about living sustainably as church. Wild Advent was a thing last year, using a resource that encouraged us to consider the themes of Advent actually outdoors and connecting with the weather patterns and nature, and involved craft. Some of you may know the book, but it was really great. So these are just ideas for integrating the themes into work that we do at church anyway. So one of the main things that's come out of our church as a sort of support in the original phase, and then because I'm also champion for climate justice for churches together in Winchester, has been Winchester Green Week. And this began as an initiative with the University of Winchester, Churches Together in Winchester, and WINAC, which is Winchester Action on Climate Change. But we've done it now. This last year was our fourth, and it's grown each year despite pandemic and having to go online completely last year. But it's very much about having identified a shift in public concern and realizing that we've got to come together with others to solve or have any sense of kind of resolving these crises, that we wanted to put on a festival which celebrated and promoted sustainable work that was going on anyway, and hopefully through it inspire new action and connections. And so we base it on the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations, and we pick out 5 in particular that we think are relevant, which includes action on the climate, protecting life on land, because we are not surrounded by water, as others might be, and responsible consumption and production, sustainable cities, and working in partnership. Those are our 5 areas of focus. So anybody who wants to put something on in the week that kind of fits with any of that is welcome to do so. And we also try to, if you like, mirror the eco-church notion, which is about this holistic approach, by thinking about the ecological perspective, which is about our relationship with the natural world and part of that, the social perspective, so how we organize ourselves as people and how we connect, an aesthetic response, so about you know, our emotional and creative response in the light of the challenges, and obviously the spiritual sense, which for us in churches is a very natural thing, but actually is applicable to everybody, thinking about the wider, this sort of meaning that we search for in life. So with that background, we just put out an invitation to anybody who wants to be involved, and we're a voluntary group of 7 or 8 now team volunteers who just coordinate the activities, and others initiate and put them on. And this year we had 45 organisations involved, which includes university, WINAC, but also the National Trust City Mill, the Discovery Centre, colleges, local businesses. And between those 45 organisations, 60 events happened, some of which were we have zero waste shops, and they're just open all the time anyway, so that counted as one, but you can see it's ongoing work. And from what we've had feedback of and are able to count up, there's been 6,000 people involved, but that didn't include all the people who came into the shops, or people who attended exhibitions beyond Green Week itself, which was the last week of September. And this year, because we'd already done a Green Week 3 times, the Great Big Green Week through the Climate Coalition had heard of our work, and so they got us involved in helping to think about the Great Big Green Week, which you probably heard about, that happened in September in the run-up to COP. So we were part of that, and through that I think they reckon there were more than 5,000 festivals of some kind or other going on across the country, which is really exciting and an encouragement, because it's like, plant a little seed and big things can grow. So these few pictures, and I don't have loads on there, but just give you a flavour. Sorry, I should have gone back to this one. To explain, the City Mill had a pledge board for people who were just coming in to look at the water wheel and the otters, to write down pledges for the planet, and they had secondhand books. The Song for the Climate event organised by Winchester Action on Climate Change was like a march and demo, but very cheerful, joyful end to the week, and we all went down to the Guildhall, about 200 people, and spoke to leaders calling for action. Here we have in the Tourist Information Office, they had a new leaflet about trees around the city centre for people to kind of connect with nature and understand place better. And then Fat Face High Street Shop got someone in to paint this kind of Green Week banner, and they do a promotion of their clothing that's made with recycled plastic, and they collect clothes people don't want anymore that they then dispose of more sustainably, and gave out seed packets and stuff. Anyway, that was just to show you a bit of breadth, and then I wanted to end on this sense of going beyond just our own walls and our own community, which is a good starting place. But here we have members from St. Peter's Church, which is the Catholic building across the road from us at United, and the Dean from the Cathedral in our Rise to the Moment Green Week service for Churches Together in Winchester, where more than 8 churches were pledging, as you've already heard, to take this forward. And churches and faith communities made up a quarter or so of the organisations that were involved in Winchester Green Week, which I think says something about the kind of level of engagement and concern. So I also wanted to end by just pointing out the sense that I feel education for sustainability is a process rather than that there's an end point or a target. And each of us has a part to play in what that process looks like. Good ideas, creativity, challenging, all these things emerge, and we expect to be transformed through the process, both as a community operating in a modern, thriving city, and as individuals making daily choices that impact the earth, just as we expect to be transformed by God's love. So this is about finding constructive rather than destructive ways of living. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Jo.